Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to this online info session on the EIC Work Program 2026 amendment. Today, we will navigate through the important novelties introduced through this amendment, which was adopted on the 17th of June. And in particular, we will look into the main change related to dual use and defense, which was introduced by this amendment. The Commission has already followed up on an initiative that was adopted by the co-legislator, the Parliament and the Council of the European Union, to introduce an exception to the exclusive civil focus in Horizon Europe for the EIC, the European Innovation Council. So my name is Marco Grancagnolo. I'm head of sector in the EIC Accelerator unit, and I deal in particular with the EIC Accelerator Open Call, the STEP call, and the new STEP Scale Up Defense call, which we will introduce today to you. Let me briefly introduce the agenda of today and the housekeeping rules. The camera and the microphones are switched off by default for all the participants, but you can ask questions through Slido. You will see here in the slide the QR code that allow you to enter into the EIC Work Program 2026 event code, and through that you can ask your questions. This session is being recorded. If you do not want your name to appear, you can submit the questions in Slido directly using the anonymous option. We will take the questions at the end and we will go through them one by one. The recording and the presentation will be published on our website, so you can tune in our EIC website and check in our presentation. There will be also frequently asked questions on the work program 2026, updated with the new questions related to the amendment itself. We will go also beyond those that may be asked today in any case. So in the next slide, we'll briefly look into what is the structure of the agenda of today. We will start with a brief introduction by me. Then, following my introduction, I will pass the floor to Keith Sequeira, Head of Unit in the GRTD, who will present the policy context that led to this important initiative on dual use and defense. My colleagues will then take the part related to the practical aspects related to the implementation of dual use in the EIC Accelerator through Susanna Getman, and through the STEP Scale Up call with Kathleen Tiquero. Finally, we'll look into the new call, the new Step Up Defense call, and this will be introduced by Maria Romero. Further to that, we will have a Q&A open to all these areas, these sections, and we'll close by 12. So I'm ready to pass on the floor to Keith for the next session. Thank you very much.
Good morning to everyone from my side, and many thanks, Marco. My name is Keith Sequeira. I head the unit in the Commission on the European Innovation Council. This is an incredibly important development in the whole policy of research, innovation support, and indeed the European Innovation Council. It's the first time we have started funding defense and dual use under the Horizon Europe program and under the European Innovation Council It shows very much that we are adapting, responding to the new challenges that Europe faces, and clearly defence and dual use is one of those challenges. So we're very happy that we have now adopted the revision in the middle of the year of the 2026 EIC work programme, and you will hear today how this is now being really opened up for dual use, and we are starting a new funding stream for defence startup and scale-up companies. Maybe I start with an example. One of the first companies we ever supported under the EIC, this was back in our pilot phase, I think in 2019, was a company called EIC. Many of you will know EIC. It started as a company and we funded it at the time to develop a technology for tracking icebergs for use in shipping and navigation. So very much a civilian application. As many of you will know, this technology is now being used very much for defense purposes as well, in the context of the war in Ukraine to track military movements, and is absolutely key to European sovereignty in satellite tracking. So it shows how the startups that we support are often having dual use applications. Under the EIC, we've now supported over 700 startups. We have invested in over 350 of these through the EIC fund. And we know many of these are already looking at defense applications. So what we're doing here is to really make this part of the EIC and also have some dedicated funding, as I mentioned, for defense. This is a first step in 26 and in 27, but we also plan to make this a more implicit part of the EIC in future. And this is the Commission's proposals for the next Horizon Europe programme that are being debated currently in the European Parliament and the Council of Ministers. In fact, the Council of Ministers are due to adopt their political position today. It's happening in Brussels, and we expect them to endorse the fact that the EIC in future should support defence technologies in all of its instruments in the future. So if we, I'll give you a little bit of the policy context, and then, of course, we will dive into, with the ISMER colleagues, how this will work in practice. So this was all started in the Defence Mini Omnibus. This was proposed just over a year ago by the Commission, and it made a number of changes in the legislation, and it made an important change in the Horizon Europe legislation that up until then had said that Horizon programs, including the EIC, may only fund exclusively civilian research and innovation. And the basis of the mini omnibus was to amend that regulation to provide a derogation and exception for the EIC accelerator to fund dual use, and for the larger investments in the STEP to fund defence as well. This is, of course, part of an overall development of support for defence industries, defence innovation. It is happening across a number of programs. There's a number of strategies that you can see there. We are also, of course, working very closely with other European programs, the European Defence Fund, to make sure that what we do with the EIC complements and fills some gaps that we believe the EIC is best placed to fill, given our experience and instruments for funding startups, providing direct equity, helping companies scale up. We believe all of these approaches support are extremely relevant for dual use and for defence. If I move to the next slide. So it was adopted on the 19th of December, and since then we have been working on how to implement this. This is quite a big challenge, because while the types of innovations, disruptive innovation is very important for defence and dual use, particularly in defence, there are some specific requirements that we have been looking how best to implement those. We move to the next slide. So this affected a number of programs. It was not only the Horizon program, it also affected the Defence Fund, and you'll see a number of other programs there. And within Horizon, this was specific to the EIC. So it has not made any change to other parts of Horizon that keep on the exclusively civilian basis, although for the future, we plan to open the whole of Horizon Europe to dual use. But then defence would be specific to the EIC. If I move to the next slide. So what has happened is that across all of these programs, we are focusing on a certain set of strategic technologies. This is under the Strategic Technologies for Europe platform, or STEP. And what we have done in the EIC, and indeed in other programs, is focus so far on three main technology areas. You'll see there digital, clean and resource efficient technologies, and biotechnologies. And what was introduced in the Defence Mini Omnibus was a fourth category of defence technologies, and this is what we will now support through the EIC Defence Call. And the scope of this is being the same on this list of critical technologies that are being supported elsewhere across different European programs in a very consolidated approach. If we move to the next slide. So what does this mean in practice? And this is what you'll be hearing about much more today following the amendment of our work programme. Firstly, the two main ongoing calls, the accelerator call and the step call, will be enlarged eligibility to include dual use cases. So the calls are ongoing. There's not any changes, but what we are doing is saying that companies that apply to these calls can now apply on the basis of both civilian and defence applications of their technologies. And this will be previously any proposal of that nature would have been ineligible. Now all of these will be eligible. And then there is a new call that is separate on defence and specific defence technologies. And that has some specific rules, specific eligibility. And for this reason, it is being implemented as a separate call than the main step call. If we move to the next slide. So an important point here is, what do we mean by dual use? And here we have looked at the market. We've discussed with the EIC board, which is our advisory body, and our conclusion is that it does not make sense to make a very prescriptive definition of dual use. We believe a lot of the innovations, the technologies, the deep tech that is being supported by the EIC have potential dual use defense applications. And of course, with disruptive novel technologies, this cannot always be seen in advance where the application areas are. So our definition that you will find in the work program, and you will see here, is technologies that have credible potential applications in civilian markets and in defense or security markets. And we stress the word credible. We do not want people to be opportunistic, to invent non-credible defense applications. And that links to the next point, which is very important, that we are not giving a preference to dual use technologies versus civilian only technologies. They will be evaluated on exactly the same basis. The evaluation criteria you'll hear today will be the same. So we are looking for the best companies, but what we are allowing is that companies, when they come to us with their business cases, and when you come to us, and I hope many of you will apply with your business cases, if there is the business case for developing applications in defense markets and you're confident about this, this can be part of your application, and it will be looked at on the same basis as other markets. If we move to the next slide. So then we move to the specific and separate call on defense technologies, and you will see the exact scope of the technologies there. in the presentations today. And as I said, this is the same as the technologies that we are supporting in other contexts. But the EIC is the only instrument at European level that can provide direct equity investments in companies. And to recall, under the STEP, we offer investments of between 10 million and 30 million euros. So quite important investments together with other investors to help companies provide and catalyze funding rounds of 50 million euros and above. And we see a major gap in the market that if we look at defense companies in Europe at the moment, when they move to these larger investment amounts, there is a lack of European capital. And this is very much what we are addressing. There are some specific rules and compliance issues. This is, as you know, a sensitive area of defense. So we will be looking at more intensive security screening. There will be more strict eligibility checks, the due diligence, and there is a difference in terms of which countries are eligible. This is set in the legislation and is all member states, the European Economic Area countries that are associated to the EIC, and Ukraine, but it is not eligible for other associated countries that are not listed there. And then the need to avoid third country control on these companies will be particularly important. This will be looked at in the investment process, and you will hear more about what that means in practice, including the possibility to provide guarantees in cases where there is that control and which would make an application eligible. Moving then to the next slide. So if we look at the budgets, what you'll see there is that the budgets for the accelerator and for the existing STEP call remain unchanged. These are the amounts that were announced back in November last year when we launched the 26 work program. And what is happening is that we are increasing to some degree the scope, although we believe that many of the companies that were applying in any case to the EIC accelerator and STEP were potential dual use companies. And then we have added an additional 100 million euros specifically for the defense STEP call. For your information, we plan to continue that in 2027 with an additional 100 million euros, so 200 million euros over this 2-year period. We are funding, as I said, between 10 and 30 million investments. So we would expect to be supporting maybe 15 or so companies over that period, but very important companies for the European response to defense challenges. That money, that 100 million euros, has not been taken from other existing EIC activities. This is new money. We have managed to secure it by the taking some of the returns and some of the unused amounts from the EIC pilot in 2019 and 2020. And there was a provision in the Defence Mini Omnibus regulation that allowed us to reuse this money that had been coming from the pilot phase prior to Horizon Europe. So that is how we have managed within the existing budgets to find this increase of 100 million euros. As I said, in the future, we would expect to have a substantially larger budgets for defence, but we believe this is a credible way to start and will already make major impacts in the 2026 and 2027. So if I move, therefore, to the final slide, thank you. So that, I hope, provides you a bit of the overall context, why this is so important, and also to give you the perspective that this is a growing area of activity for Commission programs and particularly for the European Innovation Council, where we believe this approach we have created to support startups, scale-ups, disruptive technologies is incredibly important for dual use and defence applications. So please use today to ask all of the questions to get the clarity you want. and we will do our best, of course, to respond to all of these, but we will also be making available FAQ on the EIC website so that further information and clarifications can be provided as needed. So let me wish you a super successful info day, and I pass back to Marco.
Thank you very much, Keith. This has been very, very clear. Thank you so much. We're ready to now move into the more technical details after having understood the policy context under which this amendment took place. So if we move to the next slide, I would like to the floor to Susanna Getman, the team leader for the EIC Accelerator Evaluation Team. Susanna, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Marco, and thank you, Keith, for setting the stage. I'll be repeating some of the elements, but I think given some of the questions we're getting in the Slido already, I think it's important to repeat and to clarify, because there's a lot of different options here for the different calls. So what I will focus on right now is the EIC Accelerator. And maybe we can go on the next slide just to remind, because some people are maybe new to the EIC and to the EIC Accelerator. So it's probably a good idea to refresh on what is the EIC Accelerator and what kind of companies are we looking for. A reminder, we're looking for mono beneficiaries, so one company, and it's usually a startup or mostly SME, but we also allow for some small mid caps who are looking to scale up. Really, our objective is really to find our way to the market. So the company should look for ways to create new markets and then also scale up once they get to the market. And we're looking for deep tech companies, really building on scientific discovery, big technological breakthroughs. And we're looking for companies that need significant funding over a long time frame and are risky, too risky for private investors alone. So we are there to fill the gap, de-risk the technology in order for other private investors to come in and co-invest, and so that our EIC funding will have a leverage effect and bring in the necessary private investment. So if we go on to the next slide, we offer different types of funding. Our most common, mostly about 80% of our companies apply for blended finance, which has two components. It has a grant component of less than 2.5 million euro. This is usually meant to develop technology elements still at TRL 6 to 8. And then we also offer between 1 and 10 million in equity component, and this can be used mostly probably for the scale-up elements or not necessarily for the technology development, but can be used as the company needs. That is the most common form of requested finance. We also have the option of grant only. This means we only give the grant up to 2.5 million euro, but then the ambition needs to be the same for the company. They need to be looking to deploy to the market and scale up. And so then the company needs to demonstrate how they're going to find that other finance to be able to scale up, where they're going to get the equity or the rest of the resources. So this is important for UK companies, because UK companies are eligible for the accelerator, but only for the grant only. So they would be applying for the grant only. Then we have another option, is the equity only. So these are companies that do not need, let's say, the grant to develop some last bits of the technology. They're really just looking to scale up, and so they don't need any grant, or they have other resources to cover those elements. Next slide. So in that grant component, again, it's up to 2.5 million. Then we reimburse up to 70% of eligible costs. And the small mid caps, they can apply for blended finance or equity only, but not the grant only part. Then the investment component, again, 1 to 10 million. It's usually in equity, but could be quasi-equity. The EIC fund would take a minority ownership. It's usually between 10, 20%, maybe a bit higher depending on the strategic nature of the company. And it's what we call patient capital, which is over a longer period of time before an exit, and it's really meant to de-risk the company and give them the time to be able to bring in private investors. So next slide. Again, the three types of funding options, the grant only. So there, again, the company needs to show how they have the means to finance the deployment and scale up. The grant and investment blended finance grant for TRL 6 to 8 and deployment and scale up for TRL 9. And the investment, so really they're trying mostly to go for rapid scale up. So next slide. Who is eligible? So it's always single company, so no consortia. There can be some subcontracting and affiliated entities, but it's really the applying company is one company, and it needs to be an SME under 250 employees with the necessary turnover and balance sheet figures here that you see. We do have the option for small mid caps up to 499 employees, and this is usually when they're looking to rapidly scale up. Next slide. There is an option at short proposal stage for natural persons to apply when they are just starting out, because maybe they haven't incorporated yet their SME or they're already incorporated outside the EU but will be transferring back into the EU. And so there are some options there at short proposal, but by the time of a full proposal, we do need to have an SME established in a member state or associated country. Next slide. It's one call that we have for the accelerator, but we have two different topics, let's say. We have an open topic, which is really open to any field in any technology. It's really a bottom-up approach, and this is where we get most of our proposals, but we also have very dedicated budgets and priorities for challenges. So there we have predefined thematic areas, and we really aim to achieve really specific objectives with each challenge. And those are available on our website, in all our information online. But maybe next slide, we can go into showing you, okay, how do you apply for the EIC accelerator? There's a few different steps that you need to take. First of all, I mentioned earlier a short proposal. This is let's say testing and screening your idea, and you submit it. Every month we have a possibility to submit, and remote evaluators assess it very quickly and give either a go or no go. And then you would be given, let's say, a ticket or the possibility to submit a full proposal. Now, the full proposal is evaluated remotely, first of all, by a technology expert who will have an interview with the company. Then it's assessed by an evaluation committee. And based on those assessments, we draw up a ranking list of the highest ranked proposals to invite to an interview. So the last step of the process would be an interview with a panel of jury members who will, you would come to Brussels, pitch your proposal in front of this jury and receive either a go or no go to be funded or not. Next slide. So this is just to give you the workflow timeline. Short proposals, we have batches every month. We usually reply within 4 to 6 weeks. A full proposal can be submitted anytime, but it's batched every 2 months. All the information is on our website. You usually receive a reply within 8 to 9 weeks from the date of the batching, not the date you submit, but date of the batching, whether or not you will be invited to an interview. During those 8 to 9 weeks, what are we doing? We're having this technology expert assessing and having the interview with the company, and then having the evaluation panel assessing and drawing up a ranking list. Then we have, after every 2 batches, we organize an interview session. So we have 6 batches of proposals per year that lead to 3 interview sessions per year. We go to the next slide, we can look quickly at the what is new. So that is all what has existed, and this is the process for accelerator that is not changed whatsoever with the amendment. But now to show you what is new in the amendment, it's what Keith was mentioning, that we now have this option for dual use. So what do we mean by the dual use? It's that it is innovation that has a credible business case addressing demand from both civilian and defense markets, especially, for example, procurement by defense market buyers. Again, no preferential treatment for dual use innovations. We are assessing them the same process, the same criteria, so no preferential treatment. Next slide. So the main novelty is that we have added this award criterion that gives the option that if you're applying and you do have an addressable civilian and defense market, you can note this in your application and the experts will assess it. But this is really the only difference in criterion. But the whole process really stays the same. But this is the moment where the company will explain what is their credible defense and civilian market business case. Next slide. The other, it's a bit of a formal point, but you will, at the time of submission, will have the option to make a declaration saying that whether or not you are purely civilian or if there is a military application. This is just really for tracking purposes, but it's, again, not preferential treatment to do any kind of preferential treatment. A reminder that proposals should not contain any classified information at all. So please do not provide any level of classified information. Next slide. At the time of, if a proposal shall be selected for funding, there is a new addition to the grant agreement that would allow the agency to object to non-exclusive licensing of results should the company want to transfer ownership or exclusive or licensing outside of the EU. So that's a novelty with this amendment. Next slide. Again, this is just a recap of what the process is for a short proposal. So I mentioned short proposal, you have a 12-page template with a 10-page slide deck and a 3-minute video. This is meant to be quite easy for applicants. It's submitted on a monthly basis. It's evaluated by 4 experts. If at least 3 of the experts give it a go, then there's the right to submit a full proposal. If 2 or 3 or 4 experts give a no-go, then it is rejected and you may be able to resubmit if you're within your resubmission limits. There is a resubmission limit of 3 strikes, let's say. After the 3rd rejection, you're not able to submit any further. So if you do get a go at short proposal stage and you can submit a full proposal, next slide. Then the full proposal consists of a 20-page proposal. So it basically has very similar questions as a short proposal. So you can reuse your short proposal, but then it has some additional questions. There is also a lump sum table. You can reuse your pitch deck. You can reuse your video. You can also change it if you want, but you can reuse a lot of the previous information. There is a lump sum table to describe your work packages and how you will distribute the money of the grant. Financial and implementation plan annexes as well to show your financials and how you will implement the different work packages. So this is evaluated all by a technology expert, which will have a face-to-face remote interview online. And then there will be a report drafted by this tech expert that we call it. Next slide. The tech expert has this interview online with the applicant, Esmea, so one of us is moderating the interview to make sure everything is followed correctly, the process. It's a 1-hour interview online, and it's a moment for the tech expert to really dig in and ask to clarify any points that are in the written text. The thing is that we want to give the opportunity for the company to explain and clarify, but we also want to ensure that proposals aren't drafted by AI and that there's really substance behind the proposal. Next slide. Then the proposal is also evaluated by an evaluation panel with at least 3 experts. They take the ultimate final decision, they draft the final report, and then based on their score and the ranking list, we see how many proposals will be invited to interview. And this is limited to 2.5, the available grant budget to be invited to interview. On the next slide, we see that we have these 2 batches. And now for the example of the next accelerator where this will be applicable, our next batch will open, let's say, on July 9th, so to be eligible to apply for dual use. So the proposals submitted as of July 9th will be collected on September 2nd. And we go through this process of the tech expert panels and invitation to interview. So if you apply between July 9th and September 2nd, you would know by beginning of November if you will be invited to an interview. If you apply after September 2nd and before November 4th, you will be evaluated during November, December, and the beginning of January, you would be invited or not to interview. And the interview session would be in February 2027. So next slide. The interview session is a panel of usually 5 jury members. They look at your proposal, they look at what the evaluation panel prepared, and then we have an invitation in Brussels with these 5 jury members. The company comes, pitches in front of the jury, asks questions. It's a 35-minute interview, and then of question and answer plus a 10-minute pitch, so 45-minute interview. And then the outcome there would be either a go, and the company selected for funding, or no go. And then there's an option to receive a seal of excellence should you not succeed at this stage. There's also a seal of excellence should you reach the threshold of 13 in the previous step, but not be invited to interview. Next slide. We also take very much care to avoid conflicts of interest. So we've published the names of the experts on our website. Applicants can name up to 3 experts that they see on the website that they don't want to assess their proposal. And we always check, of course, with experts to ensure that there is no conflict of interest. Next slide. This is the timeline as mentioned. The first time to submit proposals possible with dual use is after the, let's say, July 9th is when we open, because we're just closing down the current batch that's open now, and then we will, anything submitted after July 9th and before September 2nd will be the first batch of full proposals, which will include dual use. And I think that's all that I have. Yeah, we have other, as mentioned, we'll have all this kind of information on our website with guides, frequently asked questions, and the templates are online. So what we did was for the accelerator, because we're just adding this element of the market opportunity with dual use, we have added that to our templates. Submission templates. So that's why some of you, I think there was a question of an applicant who had received a message saying that these templates had been updated. And that's because the moment the work program was adopted, then you know, it came into effect for the short proposal and for STEP. And so if you want, you can update your short proposal, but otherwise it's perfectly fine to leave it as it is, depending on how much important it is for you, the dual use or not. But again, there's no preferential treatment, and it's really up to the applicant. So I think we'll leave it at that and see if there's some questions later on. Yeah, very quickly. Yeah, so if you're selected, there are quite a few steps afterward, which you would find out. So you see at the left, there's an application process, evaluation, and then afterwards, there's a grant preparation, there's a technology due diligence, there's a grant agreement signature, pre-financing, then there's regular progress meetings, then a second pre-financing, another progress meeting, a final review, and then payment of the balance. But this is all over the course of usually 2 years. So there are some steps. Okay, you've made it to the top. You've made it to you've been selected for evaluation. But then, yeah, you will then find out what the next steps are. And then the next slide, I think we also just mentioned briefly that if you're looking for an investment, component as well, there's the EIC fund, which is the venture capital fund that was established by the Commission that manages the equity investments for the accelerator and the STEP. And it's an external fund manager, and it is looking at it does not do the selection process, but takes over later on the actual decision on how much investment is made and so forth. But if you see on the next slide, there's quite a few steps there as well, that once you're selected, there is an initial assessment. So the EIB, European Investment Bank, is the one that is managing various elements of the investment process. So they're looking at trying to see where the company is in their investment journey, and if they need the money right away, or if they're more on a delay track, or if they need the investment, they have the round ready to have a more urgent investment needed. They work on the due diligence. They propose an investment. Then the actual investment decision is taken by the investment manager. But then the investment agreement and disbursement is done in conjunction between the fund manager and the EIB. And then the monitoring and management, again, is also by EIC fund manager and EIB. So you get the selection, and the grant management is done by EISMEA, and then EISMEA coordinates with EIB and EIC fund manager for the investment elements. Sorry, I think I'm going over time, so I think this is it for me. Yeah, very good. So there's a lot of information there, went quite quickly. So if you have questions, please put them into Slido. And now I pass it back to you, Marco.
Thank you so much, Susanna. This has been very, very useful and convenient for everyone. It's indeed a lot of information. We will certainly give the time to everyone to look into this video after the end of the session, because as we said, the video will be available on the EIC website. I also just wanted to say that we are close to 800 participants, which is a show of incredible interest by all of you, and I'm grateful for this. And on top of this, we also have many questions on Slido. We already have 40 questions. I won't, of course, take those questions right now. As we said, we will do it at the end. But I see some recurrent points that I think it's important to make clear already in view of the next presentations. When we're talking about dual use, we are really talking about the EIC accelerator, which is what Susanna just presented, and the STEP call, which is what Katalin will present just afterwards. While when we talk about pure defense, there is a dedicated defense call with 100 million euros dedicated to pure defense. So anything that is dual use falls within the EIC accelerator and the STEP, classic STEP, and the defense, pure defense, will have a dedicated budget under this defense call. We will also look into the questions related to the association, associated countries, and their participation. Let me just also make clear that the rules vary depending on the instruments we're using. For the EIC accelerator and STEP, the rules are the participation is open to associated countries to the Pillar 3 of Horizon Europe. In the case of the defense call, this is restricted to member states, countries of the European Economic Area, so EEA countries that are associated to Horizon Europe, which basically limit the participation to Norway and Iceland, and Ukraine. With that, I think we can move to the next step. I see Katalin is already ready. Katalin, the floor is yours.
Good morning to everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Katalin Tikiro, project advisor within the EIC Accelerator, part of the team working on the EIC step scheme. So perhaps we can move already on the next slide so that we briefly talk about what STEP is. So STEP stands for the Strategic Technologies for Europe platform, which is a regulation that entered into force in March 2024. And it was initially designed to cover three main strategic technologies like digital and deep tech, clean tech, and biotechnologies. It has been recently updated to include a fourth area, which is defense technologies, but this will be covered by my colleague Maria. And perhaps it's very important to understand the difference between the two calls which we will have under the EIC STEP scale-up scheme. So I will be talking today about the EIC STEP scale-up, which is an existing call that started back in 2025. So now it's in its second year of publication, and we are now opening it also to dual-use technologies, but only for these three main strategic technology areas: digital and deep tech, clean tech, and biotechnologies. And then there will be the EIC STEP scale-up defense call open only to the defense technologies. So not so there is this slight difference that it's important that you are aware of when deciding to apply for either of those calls. So what we are looking under through the EIC STEP scale-up call is to support new technologies and critical technologies for the single market of the EU, and we are also aiming by supporting the companies which have reached a certain level of maturity to reduce the dependencies of the EU on other regions, other big global regions. We are implementing the STEP scheme under a coordinated manner, meaning that the STEP is a sort of an umbrella initiative that covers different calls under various funding streams, like Horizon Europe, in our case with the EIC Accelerator, or for instance, through the ERDF, so through cohesion and structural funds. You will have through the slides access to the STEP guidance, which provides more information about what these technologies cover, because there are plenty of technologies that can be targeted through the call. On the next slide, we will cover the objectives of the call. So as mentioned, we are looking at supporting the scaling up of critical technologies, and by doing this, we will aim at supporting the companies to scale up globally and to provide them with important funding tickets in order to support their development. And by doing this, we aim to reduce the risks that the companies face when developing and going through to a next stage of their process. On the next slide, we will talk about what is being targeted in terms of the beneficiaries, so the companies that we are aiming at. We are looking at we are looking at more mature companies. So if you look at the funding funnel of the EIC, we start with the EIC Accelerator. We start with the EIC Accelerator and its open and challenges calls, so under which we provide up to 10 million euros. But then we are looking at companies that are able to raise major funding rounds. So for the purpose of the EIC STEP scale-up call, we are looking at companies that will be able to raise at least 50 to 150 million euros or more over the next period in order to become a global leader. We are not limiting ourselves when providing this support to EIC fund portfolio companies, so we are also open to companies that haven't been supported so far by our instrument, and we are trying to basically to avoid the gap in financing when it comes to the risk that these companies face, meaning that we want to make sure we bridge the gap when it comes to the financing that is not necessarily able to be completed, the financing round which is not able to be completed because some investors are not necessarily engaged to support the company. Next slide, please. So we will be providing only equity. It's only equity support for the SMEs, including the startups or mid caps, small mid caps. We will see in the next slide what we mean by small mid caps, and at the same time we are also introducing through the STEP regulation the concept of STEP sovereignty seal, meaning that due to various limitations in the budget, for instance, and it's likely that the outcome of some companies would be a no-go, for which we would be able, even though they are excellent in their proposal. So in these situations, we would be able to provide a sovereignty seal that allows the companies to still get access to funding via different complementary funding schemes like the ERDF, for instance, ERDF funds. Next slide, please. So we were discussing about the small mid caps. So as also Susanna mentioned before, we are looking mainly through the EIC accelerator at mono beneficiaries. So for the EIC Step Scale Up call, the eligibility of these companies are the following. So they need to be a single company classified as SME, or it can be a small mid cap, meaning that the company can have up to 499 employees, which has to be established in a member state or an associated country. Very importantly, also the holding entities in some cases are allowed to be part of the scheme if they are established in a member state or an associated country. And then at the same time, an investor may also submit a proposal on behalf of the company, provided that there is a predefined agreement between the investor and the company. Next slide. Perhaps this is the most important slide for this call. It's about the eligibility and admissibility criteria. So in order to be eligible for the call, you would need to provide a pre-commitment letter. This has to come from a single qualified investor, which is not necessarily a new one or the lead investor for the round which you are aiming for. The pre-commitment represents at least 20% of the total targeting funding round, and the total funding round shall range between 50 to 150 million euros or more, as previously discussed, and it has to be at least 5 times more the EIC investment, which in our case for this call, the EIC investment can range from 10 to 30 million euros per ticket, and per company. You will find in the slides what a qualified investor means for this purpose. But what I would like to cover now is the eligibility process about the pre-commitment letter. So when it comes to this 20% that you have to have secured at submission stage, you'll also have to make sure that we would deem eligible pre-commitments for which 20% of the funding round is not invested at the date of the pre-commitment letter. So very important, this last mention on the first column. When it comes to the documents which we'll have to submit, so apart from this pre-commitment letter from one single qualified investor, you'll have to submit a business plan, a pitch deck of maximum 15 pages. This will be also presented later if you're selected during the jury interview, so you won't be able to adapt those slides afterwards. A financial plan is also required, the results of the freedom to operate analysis, and the CVs of the key personnel. Next slide, please. So to wrap up, we are discussing about the EIC Step Scale Up call, which has a budget of 300 million euros for 2026. We are in the middle of this year, so this means that part of this budget has been already used for the previous batches. We are talking about equity-only support, about larger tickets of 10 to 30 million euros provided by the EIC fund that would contribute to major funding rounds of 50 million euros to 150 million euros or more. Then you would be able also to receive a step sovereignty seal if you are successful, or in some cases, if you're not successful in getting the 10 to 30 million euros, you might get only the step sovereignty seal. We can go already on the next slides because I would like to provide you with more information about the timeline of this specific call. So the call, you can already apply. It's an ongoing. It works on an ongoing basis, so you can already submit your proposal. We are now in the middle of the interviews of the second batch, which closed on the 6th of May, as you can see on the second row. So we would be welcoming your application for the batch of 9th of September, for instance. So that would be the moment when we will batch the proposals which were submitted between 6th of May and 9th of September. When it comes to the process, so once we draw a line and we see how many companies have submitted for this third batch, we will run our eligibility checks on the pre-commitment. We may run a technology due diligence if necessary, and that would last approximately 4 weeks after the batching date. And following these checks, if your proposal is successful, we would invite you to the interviews, for which you will have 2 weeks to prepare. For instance, the interviews happen remotely with an EIC jury of around 5 to 6 members, and after the jury interview, you will get the answer of the outcome of your application in approximately 2 weeks following that. Next slide, please. So very briefly, as I think we are late, as mentioned, the evaluation process covers the following steps. So we would receive the proposal, we would assess the pre-commitment and the admissibility and eligibility criteria. We would run know your investor assessment, pre-interview technological due diligence report if necessary. And afterwards, we would invite you to a remote interview with the jury. And of course, if the company receives a go following this interview, we will invite you to the next stage of the process, which is the investment one done with the EIC fund. So we would propose you towards the EIC fund to receive the amount that you are selected, but only after you have successfully passed the post-election tech due diligence and the other due diligence processes that are necessary to be covered following the selection of the jury. So your journey doesn't stop at the jury interview. You would have to follow other additional steps in order to make the investment happen in reality. But this will take place afterwards with our investment advisors, and about which we can actually elaborate further when the time comes. Next slide, please. The evaluation criteria follows of this EIC step scale-up call follows the evaluation criteria of the EIC accelerator, but there are some small details which were added on top of those. So, for instance, under the impact criterion, we are looking at the step impact. So you'll have to show the jury clear and measurable way on how your company and your project will have an impact on the EU single market, either by strengthening its competitiveness or by reducing the strategic dependencies. And then, very important, we have the investment leverage effect under the implementation and risk criterion, the third one, under which we are looking to, we want to see how much your funding strategy is, how will you be able to raise the remaining equity, which is not which is needed on top of the pre-committed amount that you have. Next slide, please. As mentioned, the outcome of this evaluation will be can be a rejection. Then, if you're not rejected after the eligibility checks, we would invite you to the interviews, where the outcome would be a go plus the step seal, a no-go, or a no-go plus the step seal. So you'll be able to get funding possibly through other avenues, which are elaborated on the EIC step page. Next, please. So what's new under this call? We are opening up the EIC step scale up call also to the dual use applications. So meaning that we've maintained under the impact and under the sub-criterion market opportunity the same questions: what and how big is the market addressed? What is the realistic expectation of the share of the total market? But then we have introduced this mention. If you decide to use to submit a dual use application, you can add where relevant information, whether about the addressable demand across civilian and defense end users, and also to explain the credibility of the business case for both. Next slide, and the last one. We have also updated in our documentation the part about the focus on civil applications. So some of you that are used with the process may know that this was excluded. So due to the dual use angle right now, and since we will allow you to apply under the dual use track, you will be able to do so because we also updated this question. But very importantly, for this dual use track, we won't allow any classified information to be submitted at proposal stage. So please refrain yourselves from, if you have any kind of classified information that you would like to share with us, please don't do it under the EIC step scale up call. And I think this was my last slide. And I would like to thank you so much and give the floor back to Marco.
Thank you so much, Katalin. So we are moving ahead quickly to the next step, which is the presentation by Maria of the defense call. So what we have talked about so far is dual use, with the intention to remove the exclusive focus on civil applications which existed in the past. So the main change is that we are now opening to the dual use under the EIC accelerator and the step. Now, with Maria, we enter into a new field of defense specifically. Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Marco, and good morning to everybody. I am Maria Romero, a project officer in the EIC Accelerator and also co-coordinator for this step scale-up defense, working very closely with Marco, with Susanna and Katalin in this very interesting topic. And I'm very happy to give you all the details of the defense call. So indeed, let's start with the objectives. Why do we want to put this call forward? It's because we want to help ambitious scale-up companies developing critical defense technologies to access significant equity investment and strategic support that we can, from our side, from the EIC and the EIC Fund, give to them. We want to propel European defense innovators to become strategic leaders in their fields, at a global level. And we want also to strengthen the European defense technological and industrial base and reduce the strategic dependencies that we may have from other continents. And we want to really push European leadership in this defense field. Next slide, please. So, first of all, in terms of eligibility, so this EIC STEP Scale-Up Defense Call has 11 priority capability areas, or what we call 11 technology areas relevant for the STEP. I would like to kindly invite you to have a look at what you see here, the reference on the bottom of the slide, so to the second guidance note on the Strategic Technologies for Europe platform, where we will clarify each of the specific topics. Here I will just list them. So we are looking for innovations in air and missile defense, artillery and precision strike, missile and ammunition, drones and counter drones, strategic enables, cyber, artificial intelligence and electronic warfare, military mobility, ground combat, maritime, air combat, and finally medical, including countermeasures. And you have in this second guidance note all the examples of all the technologies that are included in these fields. If we move to the next slide, please. Okay, so another critical point here is that in order to be eligible under this call, the products that the company is proposing, the technologies or the service must have a primary defense applications. So in the case that you have solutions with civilian or dual use applications predominantly, you should refer to the general EIC STEP Scale-Up Call in case you are looking for equity support, but not for this one, because this one, the defense is primarily defense application. Also, in order to apply to this new call, your innovation must also be critical. And here we have in the new amendment of the work program, what do we mean with critical? So what we mean is that this innovation brings to the internal market an innovative, emerging and cutting edge element with significant economic potential, and or it contributes to reducing or preventing strategic dependencies of the union. So as you see, you need to be under the STEP priorities plus be a critical innovation with a primary defense application. Next slide, please. This call is mainly, well, it's only for mono beneficiaries, and we discussed specifically during Kit's intervention on the policy context that the participation is limited to SMEs, including startups and small mid-caps established or in the European Union or in Ukraine or in European Economic Area members that are associated to Horizon Europe. Then the call has a very specific exclusion rule to protect the European interests in this defense field. That is that legal entities that are established in the Union, in Ukraine, or in a European Economic Area member associated to Horizon Europe, but that are directly or indirectly controlled by a third country, that is not Ukraine or any of these EEA member associated to Horizon Europe, they will need to provide guarantees. Also, if the legal entity is in such third countries. So they cannot participate unless they provide guarantees. If we move to the next slide, and just to say that also apart from these applicants, we can have also an investor that could apply in the name of the company if there is an agreement. But I would like to make a point especially on these guarantees. So in the case the applicant considers to be directly or indirectly controlled by a third country, that is not one of the eligible ones that we mentioned before, or a legal entity that is in such a third country, the applicant has to carry out a self-assessment in which the applicant will determine if it is the case, if they are indeed directly or indirectly controlled by a third country that is not eligible or by a legal entity of such a third country. In the case, if this is the case, so if the applicant believes they are directly or indirectly controlled, then the applicant should submit guarantees at the time of the application. So you will have in the submission form different slots, and there will be a slot to submit this self-assessment and also to submit the guarantees. that needs to be in accordance with the national procedures of the member state of the European Economic Area member associated to Horizon Europe, in which the legal entity is established. That's the first possibility. If we go to the next slide, please. Another possibility is that even if we advise to submit the guarantee as fast as possible, as soon as you know, but if you don't, then applicants will be requested to provide these guarantees if invited to an interview. So if you passed all the eligibility checks with the EIC jury. So we will give a maximum of 2 weeks after the end of the interview to submit these guarantees. And in case the applicant will fail to submit the guarantees, it or they will be deemed as non-eligible. We will anyways have some guidelines in the funding and tender portal regarding how, what do we expect from the guarantees, even if now we are going to show you the template so you know a little bit more. And just to also finalize on this topic, I would like to let you know that there could be even a third possibility. So at the latest stage of the selection process. So if the applicant did not complete the self-assessment, but once it is chosen or the applicant had a go in the interview during the investment due diligence process, we discovered that the company is directly or indirectly controlled by a third country that is not Ukraine or is not one of the European Economic Area members that are associated to Horizon Europe, then we will request to provide guarantees within 2 weeks from the date of the request. And again here, if the applicant fails to submit these guarantees, then the application will be deemed as non-eligible and we will not pursue with it and we will not support it with equity. So these are the 3 cases that we can have regarding to guarantees. If we move to the next slide, we wanted to show you how the guarantee declaration looks like and what do we expect. So we expect that the applicant declares that their involvement will not contravene the following interests as described in the call conditions, so that it will not go against the strategic interests of the European Union and its member states, that will not also go against the security and defense interests of the European Union and its member states in the framework of the Common Foreign and Security Policy that is in the Title 5 of the Treaty on European Union, that will not either go against the objectives of the EU funding program, and that also the applicant has put in place all necessary measures to avoid issues such as concerning control, access to sensitive information and results, including intellectual property rights, as set in the call conditions, and that the guarantees also comply with Article 48 of the Horizon Europe regulation. So these are what we want the applicant to confirm. And at the same time, if the applicant would have participated in other calls, like you see here, EDF, ASAP, EDIRPA, and they would have submitted a guarantee declaration before, then we will ask also to declare that and to know if there have been any changes since their participation in this other call. And then it will need to be signed, and of course, the member state where this guarantee is coming should also ratify that this information is correct. Next slide, please. Yeah. So some main elements or information about the EIC STEP Scale-Up Defense Call. So we have a budget for this year of 100 million. It's only equity support, and we only support the companies with equity in larger tickets from 10 millions to 30 millions. And what we expect with our support is to catalyze rounds of investment that are from 50 to 150 millions or more. There are some prerequisites that we have already seen, but something that is also very important for us to, let's say, enter in this deal is that the company has a pre-commitment from a single qualified investor of a minimum of 20%. We will see more details just afterwards. And we expect also that we could facilitate the access to InvestEU venture debt if the company wants. As also Katalin was mentioning, because this is similar to the step call, we would give to all the applicants having a go or receiving a no-go, but complying with the threshold in the evaluation criteria, the STEP sovereignty seal, with the idea that they get support from other instruments and that they also get access to the business acceleration services so that we can in a way support them to get there where they want to go. But if for example, we don't have enough budget, but they are still good companies. And we will talk just afterwards about evaluation and award criteria included in the call, because they are specific to the STEP defense conditions, and then we want to also share them with you. If we move to the next slide, please. So who are we looking for? So we are looking for projects failing within the defense strategic technology areas that we mentioned before and that are described in the STEP second guidance note. We want companies that have already secured initial funding rounds, aim to raise a major funding round like 50 to 150 millions or more, and that they want to scale up and become a global leader in the defense industry. We will support EIC fund portfolio if they have a good defense project, but for sure, any new companies that fulfill the criteria. And we also, in this, let's say, concept of a step, we are looking for companies that have a significant risk for commercialization and scaling up the technology, and that we know that they cannot be financed by the market itself, and that we need to go and try to help that they we crowd in new investors with our own investment. So if we move to the next slide. So here, regarding this eligibility and admissibility criteria, we wanted to make a point also on the fact that in order to move forward to an interview and to be eligible, we are looking for companies that have already a pre-commitment from a single qualified investor. It has not to be a new one or a lead investor, but if you see, we have also updated the concept of the definition of qualified investor in the new amendment. So we mean by a qualified investor, an investor that could be public or private, which has been subject to the know your customer or the anti-money laundering screening, and is not considered high risk. There could be exceptions in case it's duly justified, and we want to protect against risk to economic security. If we see there is an investor of high risk. What we want is that this pre-commitment, and it's compulsory, is at least 20% of the target funding round that the company or the applicant is aiming to raise. And there are also some requisites to fulfill, is that the portion of the pre-commitment corresponding to at least this 20% of the funding round must be fully uninvested as the date of the pre-commitment letter. So it cannot be already invested. And in the case we are talking about syndicated pre-commitments, as long as there is no individual entity contribution that is equal or above the 20% threshold that we are marking here, they will be deemed ineligible. Then in this pre-commitment, so the idea is that the total targeted funding round must range from 50 to 150 million or more, and that's our, let's say, the fact that we go into it will mean that they will raise, we will catalyze 3 to 5 times the EIC investment in this round. Then regarding the proposals documents that we are expecting to see, is a full business plan, including the company's ownership, the financial structure, and the justification also of why they are applying and why they do comply with the STEP defense. A pitch deck of maximum 15 pages in PDF format, and this is what the company will be able to present in front of the jury members if invited to an interview. We expect to see this pre-commitment from a single qualified investor, as we said before, a financial plan, the results of the freedom to operate. We also want to know more about the key personnel that they have, so that the applicant is sharing with us the link to the BIOS or the LinkedIn that they will need to include in Part B. And again here, as I was saying before, if the company believes or the applicant believes that it could be directly or indirectly controlled by a third country that is not eligible under this call, we also hope to see this self-assessment in order to avoid problems afterwards. And in case they deem to be in fact controlled, then we will also like to see the guarantees. Next slide, please. And here we are going to go into the details of the award criteria. So I see, so we will have excellent impact, level of risk, implementation, and need for union support as before. But here we are going to go a little bit more in detail in the different sub-criteria. So regarding to excellence, so we are going to look into the innovation and defense technology breakthrough. So what we want the applicants to reply to are the following questions. Is the proposed innovation deep tech in nature, stemming from cutting-edge scientific or technological advances with a clear defense application? Does it represent a significant improvement in a cost, performance, or capability compared to existing or alternative defense solutions? So you see, we want to see the breakthrough technology, the deep tech component, and also how this improves what is already in the market, in the defense market. We are going also to ask about the technological feasibility and readiness. So we expect to see in the different applications answers to these questions. So has the technology been developed in a safe, secure, and reliable manner? Has it been adequately assessed, validated, or certified for the intended defense application? And is the current technology readiness level substantiated? You know that in this case, we are not looking like in the accelerator for a specific TRL development. So we are not looking for companies with TRL 6. But anyways, we are looking for a substantiated. So whatever is declared in the application should be substantiated in terms of technology readiness level. Then the latest sub-criteria here in excellence is intellectual property. So we expect to find answers to, does the innovation have an adequate IP protection and a sound IP strategy for defense market? Has the applicant demonstrated freedom to operate and the ability to control its core technology without undue third country dependency? And here we have between brackets the absence of third country export controls as the international trafficking arms regulation or the export administration regulations that are referring to the US market, for example. If we go to the next slide, please. So regarding impact, so we have these three sub-criteria. First is the market opportunity. So what and how big is the defense market address? And what is the realistic expectation of the share of the total defense market over the medium term? And here be very careful because you will need to give answers to in the EU and globally. So what is the market expected in the EU and globally? And does the company demonstrate credible traction with defense end users on a realistic pathway to adoption and scale up within the European defense ecosystem? Then we will look into the business model. So are the detailed business model and revenue strategies sound and adapted to defense market specificities? And you see here we have some examples because the defense market is a very particular one with procurement cycles, classification and security requirements, export control constraints, certification, qualification pathways. So we want to see all of this and if the financial protections are realistic given these specificities. Then, for sure, any proposal needs to justify the step defense impact. So we want to see if the innovation have a clear and measurable positive impact on one or both of the following. It could be strengthening the European defense technological and industrial base by bringing to the EU internal market a cutting-edge defense technology with significant economic and security potential, and reducing or preventing strategic dependencies of the Union in defense critical technologies or capability. Applicants from associated countries will need to demonstrate contributions to the EU internal market or to reducing strategic dependencies on third countries. So be careful there. If you come from an associated country that is also eligible under this call. And latest, does the applicant demonstrate a credible commitment and concrete ability to engage with EU defense innovation ecosystem? Next slide, please. We will finish with the work criteria now. So talking about the level of risk, implementation and need for union support, we expect to see answers about the team capability. So does the company have the necessary team to develop the innovation and scale up the company within the defense market? So it's the team really adapted to the defense market. Does the team have relevant defense sector expertise, and where and if needed, appropriate security clearance, because they will need to manage sensitive information, have a skills or competence gap being identified with a credible plan to fill in. So this is what we expect from the team and from the future also team's capability. The risk level of the investment is the investment of nature and risk level, including defense-specific factors such as longer procurement cycles, classification constraints, and limiting exit pathways. So you see here the specificities of the sector that European market across will not finance in full without EIC fund participation. So here, this is what we were saying before. We need to find why the market will not finance, and you need the EIC fund support. For the investment leverage, does the proposal provide a convincing and realistic plans for raising an equity financing round using the EIC fund investment to attract at least 3 to 5 times the amount from other investors? So we want to see what is the traction that you have from the market. What is the anticipated timeline for concluding the financial round? How many investors have committed or engaged in advanced discussion? How pressing is the timeline for finalizing this deal? And then the defense-specific risk management. Has the applicant identified the main defense-specific risk? So again, the support, the licensing, the classification and security clearance, certification, and proposed concrete and appropriate mitigation measures. If you go to the next slide, and I will try to conclude a little bit quicker now. So if you would have any documentation that is classified information, you must contact ISMEA at least 30 working days before the deadline submission in order to arrange the delivery of classified documents, because we will have a specific procedure, and there will be a guideline on how to handle this classified information. But what we want to say here is that the classified information must not under any circumstances be submitted online through the funding and tender portal. So please be careful on that. Next slide, please. Additional conditions and safeguards. I just wanted to say that when we will reach an investment agreement, if so, there might be some additional conditions and safeguards. So when implemented investment, the EIC fund will ensure that supported company keep more of their value of the IP in the EU or in the European economic countries associated to Horizon Europe and Ukraine. So there might be safeguards that may be tailored to a specific technologies and risk profile of the company, and will include or may include provisions related to ownership changes, governance, intellectual property, location of activities, or supply chain security, to make sure that everything remains in the EU, in the European Economic Area countries associated to Horizon Europe and Ukraine, so in the countries that are eligible. Next slide, please. Further information is to say that when you will submit a proposal under the EIC Step Scale Up Defense, there will be additional questions on ethics. Ones are related to the international humanitarian law, to the respect of this international humanitarian law, and also of the use of artificial intelligence-based system, because we must ensure that the AI-enabled functions related to weapon system do not render weapons without possibility for meaningful human control. So you will see these additional questions in this call. Next slide, please. Yeah. So quickly, because I know we are running out of time, I just wanted also to say that after we check, so when a proposal will be submitted, we will do all the eligibility assessment, so that it is a defense critical technology in the scope of a step, that the country are eligible, that they are not controlled by a member state, that by a third country, and if so, they have guarantees that there is a pre-commitment, that they have all the admissible documents. So there could be, in this assessment, there could be two possibilities: or the company is rejected because it doesn't fulfill the criteria, or the company is invited to an interview with a jury. In this case, if the company is excellent and it fulfills the award criteria, and we have enough budget, we will give them a go and a step seal. I explained before what the step seal is. The company might fulfill the criteria, but at the same time, we don't have enough budget, so they will receive a no-go and a step seal, so they can have other support in other funding schemes or in the business accelerator services, or the company does not fulfill the evaluation criteria and they will receive a no-go without a step seal. And if you go to the next slide, please. Just a recap on what can you expect in terms of timeline for this step scale-up defense call. So we are opening on the 30th of June, so very, very soon. The batch, and the only batch that we will have this year, is on the 28th of October 2026 at 5 p.m. So please make sure that every application goes through before that time. And in case you have classified document to submit, do not forget that you need to contact ISMEA at least 30 working days in advance. So please take it into consideration in your preparations. The eligibility checks of the application submitted will be done in November, December 2026, and the interview are expected to be on January from the 25th to the 29th, but already in 2027. And next slide, and I think my almost last one, just we wanted to also use this info day to say that we are looking for defense expert needing for this evaluation. You know the topics that we are managing, so please, if you would be interested or if you know anyone, you have here the QR code, and this is the possibility to show interest in this call. And now we are doing also the assessment of the profiles we are receiving and making the selection of experts that will contribute to this call. And next slide. And there I will conclude and give the floor back to Marco, so we can start with the question and answer. Just to say that you will also be supported by further guidance documents that you will find in the website. You will have also a section on question and answer also that are frequently asked. So you will have all the supporting information very soon, so it can be helpful for you in order to submit your application. And that's all for me. Thank you very much, Marco. I give the floor back to you.
Thank you so much, Maria. Thank you to all of you stayed put with us for all this session. Let's go straight into the Q&A. We have some half an hour time to answer the questions. There are many questions, so we will try to be brief and straight to the point. Probably we'll batch some of the questions together, so when we don't reply to some of the questions you see here, it's because we consider they have been already replied in previous answers. So very quickly, are defense only innovation eligible for the EIC accelerator funding? Quick answer, no. Defense only innovation are only eligible under the defense step call. Next question, can you provide guidance on how evaluators will assess dual use dimension of a proposal? If technology was originally developed for civilian application but has potential defense or security use, what level of evidence of market validation would be expected to demonstrate its dual use potential? Thanks a lot for this question. I would like to ask my colleague Panos from the GRTD, who can step in to answer this question.
Good morning from my side as well, and thank you, Marco. So the assessment is evidence-based and considers whether the claimed civilian and defense markets are supported by a credible business case and their realistic route to adoption, as my colleagues have mentioned a number of times. We expect that evaluators will look for tangible evidence such as market analysis, identified customers and end users, engagement with relevant stakeholders, pilots, demonstrations, letters of intent, partnerships in relevant programs, and a credible go-to-market strategy for both civilian and defense markets. For defense applications, engagement with Ministry of Defense, armed forces, defense agencies, primes, defense primes, or defense innovation programs can strengthen the credibility of the proposition. Proposals are not formally assessed against national MOD capability plans. I saw it among some other questions. So in this kind of content, so it's good to clarify that. But alignment, of course, in terms of strategic interest, is always something that we assess in terms of the impact of the technology. Ultimately, evaluators will assess whether the dual-use proposition is coherent, supported by evidence, and accompanied by a realistic pathway to adoption and scale. Back to you, Marco.
Thanks a lot, Panos. So we can move on to the next question. Will it be necessary to provide commercial LOIs from potential customers to demonstrate market interest? It is not necessary, it's not compulsory to submit a LOI, a letter of intent, but of course this increase your chances in terms of credibility of your business case. Next question. Our technology has completed TRL 5 validation in a defense application. Under the EIC accelerator, would it be eligible to use the grant component to advance its defense application toward TRL 8 while using the equity component to further develop related civilian applications? So it's let's clarify first of all that in the moment you are applying for the EIC accelerator, you're focusing indeed on the dual use aspect of your technology. So it is up to you to decide on what level you want to bring your technologies in terms of TRL level, and to use the grant component for it, independently of whether this is civil or defense applications as such. Of course, you have to have this credible business case, and then it means that you have to be able to prove that your technology is actually meeting both markets, civil and defense markets. So be careful there, in the sense that if you're speaking only of purely defense applications, as we said before, you should apply to the STEP and not to the EIC accelerator. Next question. Assessed on exactly the same merit as civil. Okay, this is, could you explain the interest for a dual-use company to present itself as such, rather than purely civilian, to avoid being categorized into a smaller allocated budget for dual use? So just here to correct, there is no smaller budget for dual use. The budget is the same. So this is very important for EIC accelerator and STEP. There is no differentiation between what is purely civil and what is dual use. And that is exactly what it means, that they will be evaluated on the basis of the same merit. We will evaluate your proposal based on your work criteria. And in the case of dual use, if you want to put it forward, you will be also capable of demonstrating the market opportunities related to both civil and defense markets. I hope I answered this question. On Switzerland, so this is a generic question. What about Switzerland? Let me just explain that for the EIC and STEP, nothing changes in terms of participation of associated countries. All the associated countries can participate in EIC accelerator and STEP for civil and dual use. There is no distinction there. The only restriction that is new is for the specific defense call, and where the legal basis of Horizon Europe, as modified through the Defense Mini Omnibus, establish a list of countries that are eligible for defense purely. And in that case, Switzerland will not be eligible. We go ahead. We have a dual-use technology. However, our current priority is advancing our defense application. Would we be eligible for EIC accelerator funding if the project we focus on defense application? If your project focus on defense applications, I would say you should rather apply to the defense call, not to the EIC accelerator. If your technology, though, has a dual use potential, and that aspect can be proved as a credible business case, you can consider for the EIC accelerator as well. The next question, the release enabled support for dual use application submission for the EIC accelerator funding program ahead of the 8th of July deadline. So let me clarify here. So the EIC accelerator consists of the short proposal and the full proposal. You can submit the short proposal at any time, while for the full proposal, you will only be able to submit it after the 8th of July deadline. We didn't want to mix the two processes at the same time under the current batch, which is already ongoing and ends of the 8th of July. But as from the 9th of July, the full proposals for dual use will be eligible. Then the next one, for the EIC dual use specifically, what is the required TRL? So again, distinguishing EIC accelerator, where there is a request in the work program to have a completed TRL 5 to apply for the EIC accelerator, while there is no TRL restrictions for STEP. So in this case, dual use, you can do it up above TRL 5 for, so basically 6 onwards for the accelerator, and no restrictions for STEP. Colleagues, I stop here a moment. If there are other comments on previous questions that you want to intervene or correct me, otherwise I go ahead. You can always correct me later. Thank you so much. And in the interest of time, I'm moving ahead with this. So next question: does this apply to the EIC Open only, or the challenges as well? Will the application forms be updated soon? Thanks again. Yes, it applies to the EIC accelerator as a whole, both open call and challenges. And the application forms are updated already in the case of the short applications for the EIC and STEP, while for the full application and for the defense call, these forms will be available at the moment of the opening of these calls. So for example, in the case of the EIC accelerator, the full proposals will be available as from the 9th of July. And in the case of the defense call, it will be available as from the 30th of June. Next question. In the EIC accelerator, if upon the dual use tech developed, we need to implement both the defense product and the civilian product, each one with different certifications, can the work needed to be developed, the defense product, be funded with the grant money? Can it be funded with the equity money? I think this is a similar question we already addressed. You are selected on the basis of your technologies and the basis of your potential as for scaling up as a company. Then the way you use the grant and the equity money, especially the grant, it will be based on your work packages, on how you distribute the tasks in your project. The equity money is actually a share of the capital of the company, so you use it in the best way you consider it. So we can move on to the next one. What are the main changes in the rules of participation and condition applicable to the call and future grants agreement in the EIC dual use call? I think I explained this already. So in terms of participation, the rules for dual use remain the same. So all the same countries can participate. You're referring only to dual use, but also the defense call. For defense, we said there are certain restrictions. In terms of grant agreement, you've seen in the presentations there are certain changes that will occur, in particular in terms of the right to object for the Commission to limit the transfer of certain licenses inter countries. And there are also some provisions related to equity, which will also need to be reflected in the possibly in the grant agreement. Next question. My company submitted the short proposal on the 16th of June. On the 18th of June, we were informed that the application could be amended as our product qualifies as dual use. Would it be advisable to revise the short proposal now, or if successful at this stage, to use the new template for the full proposal? So I understand that you have submitted the short proposal. You can decide to revise it if you wish. This is entirely up to you. In any case, the new template for the full proposal does not, oblige you to. The fact that you have submitted a proposal as civil only as a short proposal does not prevent you to submit a full proposal explaining the dual use nature of your technology. So you're not bound by this. I hope this is clear. And basically, you can revise if you want, but you can also keep it as it is and submit in the full proposal your assessment for the dual use market opportunity. Next question. Are you going to send the recording? Yes, this will be available on the EIC website. So I'm not sure if it will be sent by email, but please check in on our website in the next few days. What is the weight of the technical expert report? I wonder if Susanna wants to take this question in particular.
Yeah,
available.
so
Yeah.
indeed. So we have the technical expert, which assesses the proposal in depth and has the interview with the company. But then it's their report is sent on to the evaluation panel, which looks at a wider group of proposals and discusses and comes to a consensus and gives the final score and decision and report. So there is a strong input from the technical expert to inform and to complement the evaluation panel members' assessment, but it's really the evaluation panel that has the final score and decision.
Excellent, thank you so much. Again, on association, are there any restrictions regarding dual use? We said that there is no restrictions for dual use to associated countries. We can move on. For the dual use track of the EIC accelerator, will you equally consider defense-oriented companies with credible civilian case and civilian-oriented companies with credible defense case? Yes, we will. For the next one, Turkey is eligible for the program. Again, it would be, sorry, I jumped to the next one. For Turkey, just quickly to say, Turkey is eligible for EIC accelerator and STEP, but not for the defense. On the one I highlighted right now, you're all the time pointing that you're not going to give preference to dual use and civil, indeed. But on the other hand, there is 1 million budget for this purpose. Can you clarify? Okay, here to clarify is that the 100 million budget is for pure defense. So let's not confuse dual use and civil that belongs to the EIC accelerator and STEP, civil and dual use, while the 100 million are specifically for defense only, and these are pure defense. So I hope this is clear. Next one, what should the TRL level be for the EIC accelerator? Up to completed level 5, so meaning we accept proposals that are developing TRL 6. How many applications are received on average? And what is the average amount of support? Maybe, Susanna, if you wish to take this one, if you have the statistics available.
Okay, so you want to know how many applications we receive on average? I think for the short proposal, we get around 200, 300 a month. And then for the full proposal, over the year, we get about 2,000 or something like this. And then for STEP, depends, maybe 100 over the year, something like that.
Thank you so much. Then the next question, can originally civil companies working now on defense, oops, it disappeared, apply it? I think that's the gist of the question. Yes, of course, companies that are developing technology. So we're not necessarily judging a company whether it is civil or defense. What we're really judging is what what technologies they are developing and how do they position themselves. Then, of course, yes, a civil company or originally civil that applies for STEP defense because it's developing pure defense technologies would be eligible under the STEP defense. We are building an autonomous fighter jet. We need 2 million euros to move to the TRL 5 to 6. Is this spot for you to invest? This looks like, I mean, it's as long as it falls within the scope of this STEP guidance note, meaning the list of 11 areas in which the dual defense call can invest. This is of interest, and there is no limit in terms of TRL level. Of course, you would need to explain the funding rounds that we are targeting, and that is possibly where the question here is possibly to be looked at further, because as Maria explained, the budget that is targeting from the EIC investment is rather higher than certainly 2 million. So we're targeting investment of between 10 and 30 million from the EIC within a funding round that could go from 50 to 150 million euros more. So from that perspective, your funding rounds seem too small for the EIC step call, defense call. Next one. Can originally, this is the one, sorry, that we had before, I think. Is there a limit to their size? That we're talking about SMEs. So in any case, there is a definition of SMEs. So the entities that are eligible are limited in terms of size. So companies above the 500 people would not be eligible. The next question, in a 100 million round, 20 million pre-commitment, 25 million equity, EIC equity, and 55 million further investment. EIC share is 25%. That's a perfect example of what we have in mind. So yes, this is a case that we could consider as appropriate. We have you have a 100 million round that you're aiming to achieve. You have obtained 20 million pre-commitment from a single investor. You come to us, you submit your proposal, then we will evaluate it. And if agreed, we would accept the investment of, for example, 25 million. This is an example, but it could fit. In that case, 25 million out of 100 would be a share of 25%. There are certain cases in which, for strategic reasons, we could go above 25%. This is also detailed in the work program, by the way, so I invite you to have a look at it as well for further information. Next question. Can a company that already holds an EIC Accelerator grant apply for a new EIC Accelerator dual use grant? Yes, they can. Maria or Susanna, do you want to say something?
I mean, I think it depends at what stage the grant is, right? So if it's still ongoing, we need to make sure there's no concurrent implementation. But if the grant has finalized, then they would be able to apply for a new grant. Just also to bear in mind, you can only have one grant only for the lifetime of the Horizon program. So it needs to be some form of blended, or just you can't have two grant onlys.
Indeed, thank you so much. Is the UK eligible for the EIC Accelerator dual use? It is eligible, although the EIC only can only apply for grant only and not to the equity component. So this means that basically they can apply to grant only under the EIC Accelerator, but not in the equity part of the blending finance, nor for the step call. Is Israel eligible for the EIC step dual use and defense program? So Israel is eligible for the EIC, for the step, the accelerator and step dual use, but it is not eligible for the defense program. Next question. Have or will new evaluators be selected for dual use solutions? Yes, this is the slide that Maria presented. We are actually searching for defense experts that can help us in evaluating the proposals. It's important that the experts will need to have both a technology defense technology expertise and knowledge of financial instruments and financial markets, given the equity component of the EIC instruments. Could you send the slides? I will discuss with Paulina. By the way, let me just take a moment to thank Paulina that is behind the scene sharing the slide or questions with us. I will check if we send the slides, but otherwise they will be available, at least the presentation will be available on the portal, on the EIC webpage. If a company, SME, currently produce only civilian products, but the technology could also be applied to a different dual-use market, is it generally preferable to pursue this opportunity through the existing company or by creating a separate startup focused specifically on the dual-use application? Let me just put it from a different perspective. We want to make it simple. We don't want to make it too complicated for companies to decide, is this civil, is this dual use, what should be the company positioning itself on this. We know simply that technologies can have dual use implications, even when they are developed purely for civil purposes. And what we want to do with this instrument under dual use is not to penalize any companies that is, having potential markets in the defense field, nor to create a situation in which this information is not shared with the Commission out of fear that they may be excluded. So this being said, the company can decide whatever it's best for them. They can certainly apply for to the EIC accelerator presenting a purely civil product, and this would not penalize them. If they have a market opportunity that goes beyond the civil side, this would be beneficial for the applications. So that could potentially be put forward. Next question. None of the associated countries except Norway, Iceland, and Ukraine is eligible to submit dual-use proposal to any call. No, that is not right. So let me put it forward once again. All associated countries have exactly the same access to the dual-use component of what we are introducing. So EIC accelerator and the STEP can be for all associated countries. It is only the defense call that is limited to Norway, Iceland, and Ukraine on top of the member states. Next one, how do you assess the credibility of dual use and defense application? This was already replied before by Panos, so I think we can move ahead. Do you need committed investment? This is a very good question. It's not committed, but pre-committed investment. So there shouldn't be actually already invested in the company and using that investment as a proof of the market traction. The logic should be that you submit a pre-committed investment, so money that are fresh, not yet put into the company. Katalin, maybe you want to step in on this or complete?
I think it's fine, Marco. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Next question, for experts and evaluators, and in regards of dual-use applications, do they need to be granted by confidential certification from their national MODs? Yes, thank you so much for this question. This is very, very important. Let's split, though, the questions related to confidentiality and to classified information between dual use on the one hand and defense on the other hand. For dual use, we do not request any classified information. We do not want any classified information for dual use. So these are not needed and we don't expect to receive it. Only for defense, where the company believes, the applicant believes that those classified information could help make the case for the defense found, then there will be a specific disposition, the provision to send those documents to the Commission. In that case, as Maria said it very clearly, we need to make sure that you contact us early enough before submitting it. So this cannot be submitted in the funding and tender portal, but will need to be basically sent to us separately. And we will get in touch with you to tell you what the instructions would be. Clearly, and going back to your question, experts that would need to evaluate the proposal may have to have access to this classified information in order to judge the quality of your proposal. And in this case, and only in this case related to defense calls, not for dual use, because as I said, for dual use, there is no classified information at all. But when there is experts having access to the classified information, we are seeking experts that have already valid security clearance. And we are checking this also with the security office of the Commission. Next question. We're running out of time. I see that there are still a few and probably will not be able to answer all of them. Maybe I take the last one and then I will consider concluding and eventually refer to our FAQs at the end of this session. So does it mean that one can apply to defense call at any given TRL? All TRL are eligible. Yes, there is no restrictions for TRL, so anything can be, you can apply at any TRL level. Of course, take into account that we're looking for significant investment rounds. So it is also important that the market is ready to invest in your company, and possibly this a low TRL level could be difficult for attracting a significant investment. For this, I see the clock. We only have 2 minutes left. I'm sorry and apologize for all those that have put the questions in the Slido and have not been able to. We were not able to provide answers. We will take note of this. We will certainly make sure that these are addressed in our frequently asked question document that we are now finalizing. Also take into account your input, and this will be available soon on the EIC website. With this, I would also like to invite everyone to always make reference to the work program 2026 as amended by the Commission last week on the 17th of June. Search for the latest version where you can find all the information, and that serves as the legal basis for any decision that is being taken. In terms of the implementation timeline, and just to recap, the dual use call under the EIC accelerator is already open. It was already open. We just make a modification, so you can submit already short proposal as from the 17th of June. For the full proposal, you will be able to submit the new ones under dual use from the 9th of July. For the step scale up call, this will be open. This is already open as from the moment of the publication of the amendment, so last week. And finally, for the defense call, this will open on the 30th of June with the deadline on the 28th of October 2026. Just a reminder, if you intend to submit any classified document under the defense call, please be aware that you need to get in touch with us at least 6 weeks in advance, so 30 working days. And with this, I think we have finished. Paulina, do we still have any other slides? Otherwise,
No, that's it.
I would kindly thank you, everyone, all the speakers that have intervened, Keith, Susanna, Kathleen, Maria, Panos, and everyone else that has been involved in this preparation and the work on this file. And we looking forward to hear from you for the next steps, also in terms of participating in this program. Thank you very much, and wishing you a very nice day. Bye.